Good evening. We're just going to chill for a second. Maybe I'll put up a note that says free stream questions. And people can say hi. Things are going pretty good. Today went by really quickly for some reason. I didn't really do very much. I walked around. I did a little bit of looking at compiler stuff. I watched a little bit of YouTube videos. I ate a salad. You know, and it's an exciting day when you eat a salad. So, yeah. Hello. There are even people hanging out in the Elite Frequent Flyer Luxury Lounge tonight. Not in the voice chat, though. Not in the voice chats. Yeah, this is going to be actual programming, although I don't know if it's going to be a high volume programming stream. It may just be me looking at things and thinking about things and maybe doing light investigations and not really changing a lot. Yes, you can scroll down to the bottom of the page for information about the Discord. What is my preferred structure for GUI code? Immediate mode GUI is the right way to do it. By far, it's like not even close. Not even close. Not even close. Oh, I can't drag this in this version of Emacs. Lame. Lame Emacs, the editor of 2027. Can I drag it maybe down at the... Oh, wait. Oh, there we go. You gotta drag it at the special unmarked location. Okay. Wasn't there someone hypothesizing that retained mode was only a thing because it was mandated by 90s performance constraints? I don't believe that, actually, because it's quite easy to see how you would do immediate mode with 90s performance constraints. It's an argument from somebody who never thought about it. The real reason you have retained mode GUIs is because of object-oriented ideology. Everybody was like, oh, obviously a button is an object, and obviously object-oriented is the right way to program. Yeah, it certainly wasn't me who said it was because of performance constraints. I don't believe that at all. Okay. I'm just going to start reminding myself about how some of these things work before we go into a big stream. Right. Yeah, I think I see a problem here. I think I see a problem here. Maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe not. A couple streams ago, you had mentioned being maybe open to having one more intern later this year. What's the easiest way to talk about it? I said somebody could ask us about it later this year. We probably can't have an intern this year just because we already have someone through the end of the year. So it would be like next year sometime. But it's also, you know, it's not a hiring full-time kind of a thing. It's like, you know, someone from college do a few months kind of a thing. You know what I'm saying? People are talking about Vulkan in the elite frequent flyer luxury lounge. So I'll tell y'all what I'm thinking about here. I'm working on library functionality and more control over namespacing, like, hey, I want to make a namespace by a certain name that contains certain stuff. Well, how do you do that? Mechanically, right? While doing all these things that the compiler already does. So one thing that happens, right, is you can have overloads of a procedure. And what are overloads? Well, they're the same name bound to different values, where those values are all procedures. You could imagine overloads of other data types, but we simply don't allow that right now. It's, overloads only happen on procedures. I just had an interesting thought about that, but it's a little bit orthogonal to what we're talking about. So how is that stored, right? When you're calling a procedure, how do you know that there are overloads? There's a lot of ways you could do it. The way we do it is every scope in the language has a list of names, and each of those names has a list of overloads. And those overloads are things that don't have entries in the scope. They're just tucked away, right? So any given name will only have one entry in the scope. But if you look up that name, it might say, well, that's declared as this thing, but it also has these other overloads, and you can follow this linked list of other overloads. So that's fine. But then what happens, when you want to export those things, say just to your outer namespace, because that's one automatic namespacing mechanism that already happens in this language, is you have stuff in file scope, but then depending on your current scope directive, you could be exporting things one layer up into an application, right? So, well, you could imagine two things to happen. One is that you sort of atomize everything, like, okay, we're going to export this overloaded procedure, which is really 3 different declarations for this one name. We're going to push all of those individually into this outer scope, and whatever code rebuilds overload lists is going to do that. And you can imagine that's a little bit slower because you're sort of naively putting all these things back together. Secondly, you could do the optimized version of that, which is like, okay, I know I'm putting these three things into the outer scope, but I'm going to append them to whatever's already there, in which case, well, you have more code and it's more complicated, but maybe it's fast, right? And the third thing you could do is say, I'm going to have more of a hierarchical thing where we might make a new overload list up there, but each thing in the overload list could be a declaration with its own overload list, right? And then if you're going to go resolve an identifier, you have to go down all those lists. That one is simplest probably in terms of the code of putting new things into a namespace. It's a little bit more complicated when it comes to looking up a name, but honestly, I don't think it's that much more complicated. But one thing that it is confusing when I'm looking at the data structures and trying to work on the compiler, because it might be really hard for me to see what all the declarations of something are right now. So I don't really know which of those things to do. And the reason this came up is that the current code, I think, is not really doing the right thing. I have, for various reasons on my laptop, I have some code that does something different with regard to making the namespaces, because that's related to a new feature. Because I'm working on library stuff, and namespacing is part of library stuff, right? So I have that. And there's an inconsistency between, the way I make namespaces and the way I look things up. And rather than just like muddle my way through it, I wanted to sit down tonight and say, should I reconsider the way I'm doing things? Should I do it a different way? Should it be cleaner? Should it be messier? And so forth. So that's where I'm at right now. Yeah, cleaner is nice, but it's also slow sometimes. Here's the thing, though. It's definitely... So I'm still adding a few features, but definitely I want to do some more periods of effort where I just try to simplify random parts of the compiler. Because everything can always be simplified a lot more than it is. And, we still have some bugs in the compiler. We still have, once you start doing weird stuff, you start running into compiler bugs. Like if you know how the language works and you do the things you're supposed to do, then it works fine almost always right now, which is good. But, if you're learning and you don't really know how things are supposed to work, you tend to sort of step outside the well-tested path. And it would be good if the well-tested path were more simple and robust, or the non-well-tested path. But then also, I'm pretty sure I could start putting in some gnarly expressions that would cause problems as well, that are supposedly squarely what you're supposed to be doing in the language, but that the compiler can't totally handle right now. I'm not sure what those are right this second, so don't ask for examples because I don't know, but I just bet there are some. Like if you do something really weird with polymorphism, if you do something really weird, I don't know, mostly with polymorphism. Well, and part of the question is, I don't know how much faster or slower it would be doing it the clean way. I'm not even sure what the clean way is. I feel like the clean way, or the most understandable way, is keeping the overload lists flat. But there's two ways to do that. There's the totally slow way, and there's the we're going to append this way. And the appending might not even be more code. But it does give you, I don't know, it might be more error prone. It feels like the kind of thing that is more error prone, but then sometimes you sit down and you're going to do it the other way, and you find out that way is more complicated than what you thought. Hello. Look at all the subscribers in chat. That's amazing. So all these people are subscribed to the channel. I wonder, Shroud has like 30,000 viewers. I've got like 100 to 200, so I only have to get 300 times as many viewers, and then I can be a very famous streamer. Any news on releasing compiler? No, although we are working toward that at the current time. Anyway, so that's what I'm thinking about. So if we keep the overload list flat, which seems like the most understandable compiler state, it may not be the fastest thing to do, but frankly, it won't be that hard to change this one thing if I want to later. So then maybe that's the thing that we do right now. Is I think that's not actually happening. I think when I export overloads to a parent scope right now, I just export what I call the overload head, which is the particular declaration that's in the scope that contains the pointer to the other overloads. I think. Let's take a look. Let's check a look. Would I mind tweeting when I go live? Yeah, you know, I'm a little up in the air about when to tweet, because I feel like if I tweet, I'm promising that it's worth people's attention. And, you know, if I'm just gaming, it's not that big of a deal. If I'm just doing frustrating Windows debugging, it's not that big of a deal. But, you know, and for this one, it's like I'm not sitting down to do a tour de force of work on one particular topic. I was more like, oh, I'm just going to have a chill stream where I think about what I'm doing and maybe do a little bit of stuff, right? Keeping it flat like just an array and not a map. Well, no, I just mean like right now, the overloads are stored in a linked list. So one list as opposed to many lists, like a tree of lists, which is how things could end up. And then we have this other issue, which is when you're resolving overloads, we look up all the scopes from where you are to everything you can see in the program. And, you know, if you're calling a procedure, then we check whether, you know, the arguments are valid such that that overload could be one of the ones you're calling. And if a polymorphic procedure is involved, we do all kinds of work to check that. We may be doing a lot of that work redundantly because, say you're internal to a file and then you're exporting some symbols up to the main program, well, there's going to be entries for the same procedure down where you are and further up in the file. So we have to deduplicate those one way or another. And the question is, are we deduplicating those before we do all this work or after? And I don't honestly know the answer to that right now. Just remove overloads, problem solved. Yeah, dude, if we didn't have to do overloads, a lot of things would be simpler, I tell you. But this is just how things are. Okay, I think I've decided, you know, because I'm about to go into this time where I'm doing this namespace related functionality, it's just going to be best to keep it flat like that. So, let's look at this. We've got this thing called do insertions for using phase 3, where we go through a source scope and we make import declarations that we put into the target scope. And, well, we actually want to make this a loop. So if there are overloads in a list, then all of the declarations in that overload have this overload of set to the head of the list. And then the head of the list has all this. So what's going to happen? Here, we're just looking at all the members in the source scope, and we're not considering their overload list at all. We're just making single declarations for them. God, and then there's do export, which makes a whole other import declaration. There's a lot of name links going from places to other places. That's another thing I need to think about. Anyway. So the caller of this gets called from a couple places. If it's an import directive, we run this on its entire scope. If we're doing a regular using, then we figure out what the scope is and import all the things. And that's it. So really nobody is doing that iteration, which means we're ending up with this sort of tree situation. And I don't think, if I go back and look at collect overloads, then, for example, we search for individual declarations, and then we call mix into overloads on that. And this is when we're, calling a procedure and looking things up. If a thing has an overload list, then we do it. Otherwise, we mix the single declaration, right? There's a few problems with this. We're not resolving the import link, for example. I should be able to make a test case that doesn't work right. I think. Like if I have two overloads of a procedure in two different files, I don't know, let's just do something. Let's make a folder called thing. And I'm going to go thing. I'm going to go import thing1, not import load. And load thing2. Thing1 and thing2 are going to be two files, each with their own scopes. And I'm going to go main do thing 3. That's an integer. I'm also going to have a no, let's keep it. Let's not import anything. All right. So we're going to do thing of 3. Okay. So in thing 1, we're going to say do thing of an int right? And then we're going to do a thing of a float. And then in thing 2, we're going to do thing of a vector 3. And we're going to do thing of a string. Whoops. I said do thing int on all of them. String. All right. Okay, so cd, and let's just run it. Oh, I called it main. All right. Now we don't have print. I was going to not import anything. Very sad. Okay, do thing int 3. Let's print some new lines. Make it easy to see. There we go. Do thing int 3. Why do I have variable types as Pascal case with snake case? I don't have variable types as that. I have names as that, I guess. I don't know what snake case is, but anyway. We don't need that semicolon. So now I'm going to do thing 3.0. I'm going to do thing hello and do thing v. So all of those worked, which I'm not surprised by on the one hand, because we've done lots of tests of overloading and stuff. But I am surprised by it because I'm not sure why this works right now. You know what I'm saying? Because I just looked at this code and it didn't look like it would do this. But we can, of course, step through and see what happens. Okay, our first call to do thing is on line 12. Why do I have so many shells open? No, not Sokoban. Actually, no, we just want to run the compiler, which we have open. What am I thinking? Okay. Okay, so we are going to break in collect overloads. Where the line number of the declaration is 12. Not there, that's an old breakpoint from before. Get rid of all these old breakpoints. Okay. Decal file name. That's basic, that's not the right one. That's string. Actually, we want site line number, not decal. The decal is the thing we're looking up. It's site, which is where the procedure call is. I hope I didn't miss it already. Okay, no, good. Good. Site is a procedure call, which it should be because we're looking up overloads. Okay, it's got a declaration. The identifier is do thing. Look at how unreadable all this is. My screen is full of zeros with null. Just put 0. I don't know if you guys know this, but 0 is equal to 0x000000000000000 less than capital null greater than. Those two values are the same. So just as a hint, if you were going to choose one or the other of those values to display, obviously you should do what Microsoft did. By the way, also, did you know that the value OX2604740 is actually equal to OX0000000002604740. So obviously, you know which one of those you should pick. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. All right. I don't know if people at Microsoft know that those two quantities are equal. I honestly don't. These are the people with the famous home of the 1 millisecond accuracy profiler that is always present and in your face about how lines of code take less than 1 millisecond. It should be a toggle for the rare cases when you're tracking memory problem. Why would that matter? If it's full of digits, then you see all the digits. And if it's not, then you shouldn't. It's like not even a real less than or equal sign. I don't know what's going on there. It's lopsided. I think they drew a less than with an underscore under it or something. Off topic, is the bytecode builder like an assembler? The answer to that question, I guess, just depends on what do you mean by like an assembler. It's not that much like an assembler, but parts of it you could vaguely say are a little bit like what an assembler does. Does anybody know where I could find a value of 0x00000000000000000 less than capital null greater than? Can anybody tell me where I could find such a rare beast? Uncheck tools option, show elapsed time, perf tip. Yeah, no, I don't. So I don't bother changing any settings anywhere anymore because I use so many computers on a daily basis and they reset when I install or upgrade or whatever. It just, no, I use basically stock Windows after running Shutup 10 and that's it. I refuse to customize anything that is not one of my personal files because my customizations are not respected by Microsoft or anyone else. So yeah, I literally don't bother. Oh, I guess I dragged my taskbar on the left, but it's not even on the left on all my computers. So yeah, by the time you're using 3 or 4 computers daily and rotate through them, all this stuff just drives you bananas. You'll note that I haven't customized any of this except to the extent that I might have accidentally dragged tabs into the wrong place or whatever, because that happens sometimes. I can't be bothered to customize Windows at all. At all. Linux I would customize because it respects your configuration, but Linux is not really usable for this kind of work, so oh well. I could do compiler development on it. It's just GDB would drive me insane. Insane. It would make me crazy. Crazy. Okay. You know, I used to think maybe someday Microsoft will do some equivalent where I can just have my configuration files in my home folder and copy that from machine to machine with a copy command and not with some weird Windows backup situation. But dude, they won't even let me decide when to not reboot my computer anymore. So forget that. They're never going to make it easy to make your computer be the way you want. They won't even do that along one dimension, which is remaining running. Yeah, no, I refuse also to use a Microsoft account on Windows or Visual Studio. So if they ever make that mandatory, then I'm definitely no longer on Windows for my main work. But hopefully they don't do that. They certainly are pushing you really hard toward logging in with a Microsoft account in the latest Windows 10. Really hard. It's like you have to click through 3 different passively aggressively grayed out things in order to see the option to not use a Microsoft account. Right, but you don't want Visual Studio 2017 to sync your settings. You want an operating system paradigm where you just have settings for everything the way that you want it, all in one place. Like a little folder that says, here's my configurations for everything. And then you can take that wherever you want. And you can back it up wherever you want. And that's just not how it is. It's just not how Windows has ever been, and it's not going to be that way. And it's a bummer. because I would use that if that was how it worked. I'm not going to use like Visual Studio syncing its own configuration. Like I'm not interested in that. It's more movement toward a closed platform where Microsoft owns my data, which I don't want. Out of curiosity, generally speaking, when do I think it's acceptable to use templates when it isn't? Okay, assuming you mean specifically C++ templates. The answer is almost never. Like I use a very small number of templates. I have this array data type, and there's that defer macro that I was showing yesterday on the stream. That might be all the templates that I use. Oh no, I have a catalog class where there's a base class that's like, what type of asset is this a catalog of? And then it could be the texture catalog or the mesh catalog or whatever. That also has one template argument. But almost none of my data structures use templates, right? It's 0% if you round to the nearest percent. Because the array is common, you'll see it pop up a lot, right? But yeah, I simply don't use them for hardly anything in C++. In my own language, I use the equivalent more because it works better and generates easier to understand error messages and that kind of thing. Yeah. You think that's more or less the idea behind app data, but it's poorly done. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, yeah, I don't want to be joined to a domain. I want to copy files. This is what Microsoft never understood. Like, I don't want to install programs on my machine. I want to copy the file onto my machine and run it. I don't want to be synced to a domain for workgroup partners, professional edition. I just want to like do things. Trying to figure out how to pass user-defined structs as parameters for vertex attributes, and so on. I don't know if I would try doing that in C++. Always when I do that kind of thing, I just have overloads. And you just use whichever overload has at least the information that you need, and then maybe you pass in a little bit of dummy information. Yo, chat, does anyone have a good reference for implementing a game screen, such as main menu, other menu, gameplay screen? Those things are very different. A menu is very different from a gameplay screen. For main menu, just do immediate mode user interface. You don't need inheritance or virtual functions to make a menu. You just draw your menu items on the screen. Like games in the 1980s had menus, you know, in BASIC. It doesn't take a lot. The other reason you know that app data is not intended to be what I want it to be is that it's invisible to users by default, by the way. So nobody, if I'm like, go send us your save file, we have to talk people through that because they don't even know where it is because it's invisible, which, by the way, is why we're no longer going to store our game saves in app data. It's a bad place for them. So the loop determining which one to draw. I'm not sure I mean, if you're drawing the main menu, you're going to draw all the menu choices, right? Do you mean which one is currently selected so you can draw it specially because it's selected, or what? How can you build the compiler so quickly? When you rebuild a compiler linking with LLVM libraries, it takes a long time. We do have incremental build turned on. If I do a full rebuild from scratch, which I'm not going to do right now, because ostensibly I'm working and looking at the state right now, even though we're talking. You know, I don't think it takes more than a minute to build the compiler right now. It takes forever to actually build LLVM, right? It takes like frickin' 45 minutes or something, but yeah. Have I learned any binary exploitation to help my code be more secure? No. The roaming stuff is mostly for enterprises, companies, and if they want profiles to roam, like if you use 5 different computers on the same domain. Dude, I'm a company, or I have a company, and we use 5 different computers, and there's no way I'm going to use any of that stuff. It's just weird stuff that nobody wants. I'll use Dropbox to sync my files if I want to sync my files, and there you go. Like, it's all, the problem with the roaming stuff is it's all designed to trap you on Windows. That was their main, it wasn't designed to help people. It wasn't designed to be what people want. It was designed to push Windows features and to trap people into those Windows features. And that's why nobody uses it. I mean, obviously not nobody, like some number of people probably depend on it because they built a system on it, but like certainly most people don't use it. Is nuclear better than Dear GUI? I've never used Dear GUI and I don't know anything about nuclear, so maybe someone in chat can answer that. You're not talking about rendering, updating a menu. You mean the game state determining which entities to draw and transitions between menus in game. So those are 2 totally different things. For transition between the menu, usually I have a value that's at 0 if I'm supposed to be completely in the game and 1 if I'm supposed to be in the menu. And it's somewhere in between. So a very general pattern that I use in games all the time is I have a target value, like a floating point number between 0 and 1 of how much in the menu am I? And then you have a current value, which every frame goes a little bit toward the target value and clamps at the target value, right? So if you hit escape to go to the menu, say, then we set the menu target value to 1, and your menu current value starts counting up toward 1. Frame by frame, and then whatever effect you want to do, if you want to pull the menu in from the side, if you want to like fade to the menu or whatever, then you know how much to fade, right? That's based on the current variable. Deciding which entities to draw is a totally different thing. Maybe you have an array of all the entities in the world, and each one of those has positions. If it's a 2D game, and it's not 10,000 entities, just draw them all. Honestly, it's 2018, just draw them all. And maybe visibility call them right before you decide to draw them. If you're making a game with tons and tons and tons of entities, then that choice can change. But first you should just draw them all and see how fast that is. Then if it's at all an issue, do something more complicated. Yeah. Yeah, seriously, just the first step, just get stuff on the screen without overthinking it. That's what I do. I always just, because games are so much work to make that if you preemptively make things complicated, you'll never finish. So make things simple, get them on the screen, get them working, and then you can decide how much of my effort do I want to put into this thing versus this other thing, right? Because you'll be able to see how it is and you'll be able to measure and so forth. Wow, I'm having a sugar crash from the rest of that cake that I ate right before the stream. Okay, we were looking at collect overloads. Due to this sugar crash, who even knows how well my brain is going to work? But we should, well, let's see what we have here. We're collecting overloads. We do this weird thing where rather than walking all the way up the scope right away, we start with the resolved declaration because if you know you're calling a procedure, the way you know that is because you already found at least one of the names and you see that its type is procedure, right? So we already have one, so we're like, okay, put that in overloads, right? And then look for other ones. Upward from that, because this one is guaranteed to be in the most near scope. So I want to look at the overload values here. It has an overload list with 4 things in it. So I'm a little bit confused because I thought that we weren't doing that, but apparently we are. Oh, but we might be doing it a little bit differently. We might be doing it and that might be the genesis of my problem. We might be doing this in a weird way. So if you'll remember, when we looked at this phase 3 situation, we do this export. Oh, it was in phase 3, right? We do this export, and then down at the bottom, we're like, hey, if we're also exporting, which this is confusing because we just like exported a declaration, but then we're like, oh, well, if we're supposed to be like exporting, so you might get here if you're doing a using, and using says export or import really of some namespace into our namespace, right? Then you get down here and you're like, oh, by the way, the current namespace that we just imported into might be a file scope that needs to, that because we said hashtag scope export, also needs to export into the global application scope. So what I'm thinking is maybe this gets called for every declaration no matter what. I'm not sure why that would be true. In fact, it doesn't look true. But maybe we do that for some reason. I don't know. I want to look at where the overload list comes from. We can definitely set a breakpoint at, hey, when does this guy's overload list get added to? But first, I'm going to get up and boil some water, and that may help me wake up and get the blood sugar going. Yeah, no, I finished this cake, by the way. That big cake that I showed on camera yesterday no longer exists in its original form because I ate it all. And it was a hit, let me tell you that. I don't want to, I could run to Whole Foods before it closes in the next 15 minutes and get more cake, but that would be bad for me. Vulcan discussion. While I'm making the water, I will advertise our elite, frequent flyer, luxury, hoity-toity lounge, which is here on Discord, where you can have discussions about Vulkan and whatever else in highly multimedia format with images and sampled highlighted code and happy faces and typing. And this is open to subscribers of the channel, and you can find info down at the bottom, and you could subscribe for free if you have Twitch Prime. Someone says, hello, plebs. All right, let me, maybe I should open up the Discord to everybody, but I did a sub Discord because Twitch just made that possible. And it seemed like a fun thing to do. But, you know, I don't care that much about subs. So if it's better to just have it be in everybody Discord, then maybe we'll do that. But at the same time, maybe if it's in everybody Discord, then like the quality of discussion goes down. Because like maybe somebody on Hacker News will get mad at something that I posted, and somebody else will say, go tell him on the Discord how this is wrong. Or someone on Twitter will say that. Yeah. Twitch chat is already everybody Discord. It's true. All right, let me cook some water. Address questions to me, and we'll do some more questions, and then we'll investigate this situation. Let me also say, while the tea is boiling, for those of you who missed it, we did end up last night finish dealing with the Microsoft craziness about finding the Visual Studio libraries. And we ended up uploading that, releasing it publicly. And in the meantime, somebody, I'm trying to find the link, which is why I'm talking slow. Somebody picked it up, converted it to C, fixed 2 important bugs, and put it on one of those gist things that all the kids care about these days. So I'm trying to find that. Let me just go to I retweeted it. Here we go. It is a fabulous, oh, that's the diff. So you can go here, and it's now more STB-like. It's in C, so you don't even need C++ and all that. So let me paste. I'm going to paste the link exclusively into the Elite Discord sub chat. The Elite Discord sub chat gets it before the Twitch chat by a good 30 seconds or 1 minute. Oh, somebody else pasted it here. Okay, well, now I am officially pasting it. Somebody pirated the link and announced it. They broke embargo and released it 15 seconds early. Anyway, use that version instead of the first one I tweeted because there is an important fix. Even though we tested both the Finding Visual Studio 2017 and the 15 and earlier paths, and both of those work, what didn't work was it would not correctly search for 2015 and earlier if the 2017 COM initialization failed, which it would if 2017 was not installed. We never tested it by uninstalling Visual Studio 2017, right? Which is what you have to do to really test those things. So we never hit that failure, which was an obvious failure case if you just look at the code and thought about it, but we were too tired to do that. So that was fixed and something else was fixed. And but yeah, it's all good. All right, get my tea and we'll keep going. Any questions? Thoughts on ray tracing? I think ray tracing is a form of computer graphics. Any estimate on release? No, I wish people would not ask. I mean, I understand why people ask. We just don't have a specific time yet. But what I'm looking at tonight is maybe another step toward that. Earlier, I saw you referring to a field on Ask Declaration that seems to be a list of overload choices. What's that about? Are overloads of a name stored in a single declaration? That is how you know that someone just joined the chat, because I've been talking about that, well, for much of the previous hour. So you can always go back and watch the VOD. Yeah, that happens. You know, people come into the channel, they leave. They see parts of things. So many search results already from Microsoft craziness. Maybe it's just that the file is new. Steve Ballmer going crazy on stage. Like Crazy Craft 2.0. Get Crazy Bird. I bet that's a quality game on the Microsoft Store. This looks really good. This looks like it's not like any other mobile game ever. Like what? Why do people even go to these platforms to play games? Look at this. Look at this. Have I tried Slay the Spire? I don't think I have. You would wager more people play Candy Crush than The Witness. Oh, undoubtedly. Undoubtedly. Way more people play Candy Crush. Doesn't mean it's good. Way more people shoot heroin than play The Witness 2. Gummy Lands. It's Gemmy Lands, not Gummy Lands. There's also Lep's World, which sounds like some kind of racist game. The genre of game is called garbage trash. Yeah, totally. You know, it's a great game when it starts showing up in your start menu. Totally. That actually is the one customization that I do on all Windows, which is I remove absolutely everything from the damn start menu. I don't want any of that garbage in there. So this is what my start menu looks like when I open it. I mean, doesn't lep sound like a slur? It totally does. It might even be, dude, for all I know. What do I think of emoji code? I think I'm going to not click on that link because I could imagine what I'm going to see if I do. All these games, look, they're all 4 stars or above. These are great games. These are great games. Lately, I've been writing code with C++ intrinsics to optimize SOA computation. Admittedly, the optimization is due to your fascination with the speed up. Since you're probably prematurely optimizing, how important was explicit use of intrinsics been to me? Not very. I don't do that level of programming very often. The last time I used intrinsics that I remember clearly was in Braid on the Xbox 360. The other programmers might have used them on the Witness, I don't know. But I did not. I wasn't doing, I didn't really do any high performance programming on the Witness most of the time. Sometimes I optimized some things, but most of the time I was doing gameplay programming and then just overseeing I mean, I did engine features early on, but they were like establish the features. They weren't like optimize and finish the features, you know. And editor programming. I programmed a lot of the editor. Lep's World is really funny. I'm sorry. I can't stop laughing about it. I mean, the fact that all of these games are so stupid just makes it even better. Okay. You know, basically that kind of intrinsic style stuff, the first place you would deploy that is when you have an inner loop of somewhere in which you're spending a lot of your time and you already know that you're instruction limited and not, you know, like memory bandwidth limited, for example, right? Or just execution unit limited, like maybe you're CPU limited, but you're CPU limited because you're already filling all the execution ports on your CPU and there just aren't anymore, in which case, well, it's hard to get there without really optimizing your code, so that's unlikely. But if that were happening, then intrinsics wouldn't help you, right? Because the regular instructions would already be doing a good enough job. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, but also, you know, if you just want to play around with them and learn how they work and, you know, sort of pretend like it's a Zachtronics game, that's totally fine. As long as you're not trying to ship a game anytime soon, right? Because if you are, then, like, if you're really trying to ship, then you should be very careful about how you spend your time, right? But if you're just having fun and playing with things and learning, and that's all fine, right? All right. PlayerUnknown's Lep Grounds. All right. Maybe you've spent too much time on your interest in it. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Only you can judge that. Like, keep in mind that that's a thing that very few programmers even know that they exist, right? So, you know, if you're applying for a job or something, and someone's like, how would you make this code faster? And you're like, well, I would use these intrinsics and blah, blah, blah. They would be like, oh, this guy actually knows what he's talking about. That's rare. Common Lep. Things are going well. All right, let's lep at this for a second. Oh, I've got too much spice in my Bengal spice. Holy moly. All right. So let's just look at when the overload list gets added to. Oh, man. Oh, okay. This is if we're making a new overload. Okay. So regarding that defer from yesterday, since using lambdas, would you recommend not using them in a graphics game loop for performance reasons? I'm not too sure whether lambdas are allocated on the heap. I very rarely use lambdas for anything in C++. There's one game that I used them a lot, and that was a game that had like a lot of procedural generation. And when you're doing procedural generation, you have things like, hey, I've got this square grid and I've marked some squares as like the territory, but we want like a nice boundary around the territory or something. Visit all those squares with this boundary handling function or whatever. I use lambdas for that. I'm not really sure that was the best way to do it even, but I was playing around with that a lot in that game. But that wasn't in the middle of a game loop when you're rendering, right? I don't remember if there's a guarantee in C++ of how much you can put in a lambda in terms of arguments before it allocates. There might be a guarantee, but even so, I just don't, they're not a good feature in C++. They're just there's too much cruft around them. You know, the fact that you can't really use them, practically speaking, without using standard function as an argument type or rolling your own version of that, it's just bananas. It pushes you into header-only programming very quickly, let's put it that way. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Guarantees are hard to come by, just as Synchronizer Man says. And you never know when, like, the compiler is confused about aliasing or something, and all of a sudden, things that you were sure would get optimized out totally are not getting optimized out. So that could happen. Trying to use all the features of C++ for a programming test. That is challenging simply because there are so many features. I don't even know how you would canonically list what the features of C++ are. It doesn't really seem possible. Does C++ still have trigraphs? He better use some trigraphs if they're in there. A lot of people we end up interviewing can't even write the simplest version of memcopy. I am not surprised. Trigraphs are deprecated. Oh no. No. Well, okay, he better use the really weird C++ hex floats that nobody understands, including me. That's a good feature. If you use that, people will be like, what the hell is that? What the hell is that? I'm going to look up, because when I was trying to figure out what to do in this new language, I was like, I should do hex floats. Let me look at what people do. And I looked at the C++ one and I was like, wait. Yeah, it's like, what? Okay, I guess. It's just weird. Of course, this is not the documentation of the input. That's like a function that prints it. Floating point literal. Representing a whole number without a radix separator. Oh wait, that's an integer. Hexadecimal digit sequence representing with a radix separator. The exponent is never optional for hexadecimal floating point literals. Like, good luck if you can understand from these what that means even, right? Like, what does that even mean? I don't even know. All right, we're gonna stop talking about C++ hex floats. Oh yeah, C++ has the user-defined literals now. Got to use that. All right, let's do some programming or debugging. All right, we're adding a thing to this overload list. It is an import declaration, I'm sure, right? So it's a declaration with an import link. that import link is something that's an overload of something else. Probably an overload of this thing. All right. Maybe export declarations. Okay, this is a thing that we do across an entire file after we're done loading it. It's a little bit weird. We just have so many places that we're doing operations like this. We have the places we were just looking at in the using. We have this part. Like maybe we shouldn't do that. Maybe declarations should just be flagged as export or not. No, because the reason I was going to say, and then maybe the adding to scope automatically pushes them up one. But the reason why this is a good way to do it is because, you know, you want to use all your cores of your CPU. So if you parse an entire file in parallel with other things, then at the end you have a top scope with all this stuff, and then you do like a fast synchronized merge of that whole list, as opposed to, you know, synchronize, add one declaration, unsynchronize. Synchronize, add one declaration, unsynchronize, right? It's almost certainly going to be more optimizable and faster and so forth to do this. Maybe. Maybe not. I don't know. Unclear. I haven't touched Unreal Engine in a very long time, like it was 2003 the last time I looked at it, but it was readable back then, for sure. It was just really complicated and hard to understand what was going on. Like, readability is not the only dimension of understanding what's going on, right? It was just like a lot of convoluted things were happening. It was very much about like indirecting through function pointers generically to do things. It was hard to get. That was like 15 years ago, so it could be much more solid today. I don't know. Okay. So this must be iterating over one guy's overload list. Yes, right here. Ba-boom, ba-boom. So when we do a using, here's part of what makes this hard to think about, is it's not like all these imports happen at once, or exports. Like here we're doing exports over everything in the file, right? And you think, oh, that's simple enough. But this is just everything in the file that you knew existed when you finished loading it, which is not everything. For example, if you have usings, they can't have fired yet, usually, because you need to know what the type is of the thing that you're using. And to know what the type is, you may have to resolve some names, right? Which may involve having this equivalent thing having already happened from other files and so forth, right? So it can't just all happen in one pass right here. So the fact that we have it happening in the using is, I think, part of the problem. Like, I bet I can break this example by putting the routines inside usings. Or I don't know, I don't know how much money I would bet, but so I can go foozle1 is a struct, and it's just got this. And I'm going to say using, can I using on a type like that? I don't even know if that's legal. It will be when we're done, but yeah, dude, we didn't even find it. Look at that. Let's... Ha 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 ha. Oh, that's so bad. We're going to have to fix this. This is a whole philosophical frickin' issue. Let's try doing this on both. Yeah, so we just didn't find it. And the reason is that we're not building a flat list anymore. Because using is not doing the right thing. Functions in a struct, is that supposed to work? These are constant, so yeah. These don't require storage because they're constant. So you can just using those, it's fine. Yeah. This is like if they were static, const, whatever in C++. I don't know what the C++ equivalent is, but it's just a constant declaration. It could be in this scope. It could be out of this scope. It could be at your mom's house. It all works. Yeah. Okay. The reason why this had better work is we're about to add namespaces to the language, and a namespace, like a struct, is basically a namespace plus storage that you could instantiate, right? So like something that's just a namespace is a struct that you can't really instantiate more than one of. And I need to think about that, about to what degree, I don't know. We'll talk about it during the library presentation after I've thought about it more. All right. So, let me just try to fix this. And if I can't do it because I'm tired from Sugar Crash, then that'll teach me to eat cake before programming. It won't stop me. Who are we kidding? I like cake. I like cake. So really what we should do is do one more here. We'll say if it arrow overload list for I don't know why this is called phase 3. It's really phase 2. It's a stupid name. Hopefully that's all the arguments that I need, right? So otherwise, we just do this. So I don't like breaking things out into, let's just do this. Right? Because it's, you know, oh, you hope the compiler will inline that, and maybe it won't. Hey, look, we're almost down to like 10 lines. So those people who say everything should be 10 lines will be happy. Oh, wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Oh my God, it's 40% too long. Cancel the compiler. Nobody will hire me because I write procedures that are more than 10 lines. Okay, yeah, we don't use source scope here. So do we use defen? I don't think so. Oh, yes, we do. I'm just naming that so that I know what it is. So we're going to call that decal. So if we are restricting to constants only, if the declaration is not constant, we report an error. Why are... We said source declaration, but then we just said it here. Do export. If it belongs to a lambda, we check for parameter shadowing. Okay. Wait, isn't this the same thing? I don't know. All right. This is single insertion. Because it's C++, we have to redundantly babysit the compiler and hate programming. All right. A lot of its. 10.362. Oh, yeah, okay. Okay, that's a different it, so we don't change that one. Conditional expression is illegal. You must not do that. It is not legal. Legal eagles. All right, well. This is a different problem. But so like this is actually on my bug to-do list, so we could start looking at this tonight. Like, why didn't... Yeah. We'll talk about this in a second. First, I want to know if I broke anything in terms of tests. And if I didn't, I will check this in. And that will be enough progress to declare victory because we will have fixed a bug. Then we can have a philosophical discussion about this. Oh, God. Maybe we just broke a ton of stuff. These are both in the same file. I have a feeling... I have a feeling this is just erroneous, so we need to do this. There is still a real problem. There is a real exhibition of this problem that we will have to solve, but for now, okay, let's go back to our little test program. Wow, we're also pointing at the wrong place. We're pointing at an unhelpful place because we're pointing at the using and not at the actual declaration. Oh, wait, let's go up here. So we're complaining about both of the thing ones. That's the same problem. These, no matter what we do, these both should be being added at the same time. Yeah, let's just see. Why is my array class's length member called items instead of count or length or something? Because that's what I called it like frickin' 15 years ago. I don't know. I don't know, man. No, the one he's asking about is not the new language. It's just the array. This array struct is the same one that I used in the witness and in Braid and in several side projects. This predates the compiler by a long time. I mean, this probably had minor modifications over the years, but it's basically the same thing. Attempt to add an overload of this procedure, but it's been locked. Okay. Check for redeclaration. Lambda overloads are now locked. Why did that happen? Oh, geez. Here's the thing. This is a remnant of an old way of doing things. So I used to store overloads on a procedure, which kind of made sense because it was like, hey, overloads only apply to procedures. Why not? Why pay for the storage on every declaration to store whether there are overloads or not when you can just store it on a procedure, right? But you could have different mixtures of overloads in different spaces. Now, I think this locked flag, we'll look this up in a second, but I think we say, look, as soon as you resolve an identifier that's a lambda, then lock it. Because if you add any more overloads, you might change what you would have resolved or something like that. The problem is it's not the lambdas to decide because you could have several mixtures of overloads pointing at the same thing. And you could newly create some. Like you could have totally compiled a bunch of stuff and then import some new things and make a new overload list that points at that old thing. So again, it's been forever since I've looked at this, but it doesn't make sense to me that this is on a lambda anymore. Who does anything with this? Wow, almost nobody. Hey, look, cleanup. Should this go on declaration? Yes, it should. Yes, it should. So check for redundant overloads. Happens in type checking, I guess. Oh, you know, one of the issues is so this is when somebody asked about n-squared operations yesterday. This is an n-squared operation where we check all the overloads against all the other ones to make sure there's no redundant ones. Okay. I even mentioned this exact thing. Yeah, this should be on the declaration. I might have postponed it because I think we might be out of declaration flags. I suspect we might be. Oh my God, look at all these declarations. Oh, we have at least one. Oh, that's living on the edge. Oh, two. We're going to have to go to 64-bit declaration flags. Maybe we should have like internal compiler flags and external compiler flags. Is there a way in C++ to do strongly typed flags? Because the problem is always when you have two flags fields, suddenly you're testing the wrong field for the other field's flags. Like, what is a good way to do that in a strongly type-checked fashion? We could also make it a 64-bit flag, but we might as well be more organized about it. Like, it would be good to know, like, hey, these flags are there because they're specified by the user and the meaning of the code depends on them. And there's other flags that are like, the compiler is using these for its own bookkeeping. All right. So we don't need head lambda anymore. We just say declaration overloads are now locked. Boom. Yeah, no more head lambda. Screw you. Okay. So who is using that flag? Whoops. You can do enum class and then define all the operators for the enum class such that it can substitute for bit fields. Oh God, no. I mean, I get what you're saying, but dude, I don't want to count on that optimizing. If I understand. Yeah, I mean, anything that is going to potentially drastically affect what code the compiler generates, or where I'm not sure what it's going to generate, I don't want to go there, because this compiler has to run fast. And I have to be not confused about how to make it run faster at all times. All right. Now, we have somehow the same thing twice. How did that happen, you may ask? I don't know, I may answer. But we didn't get the other error, so that's good. Are there type safe flags in my language? Yes, maybe they're too type safe right now. I don't know. We need to look at it a little bit. Not necessarily flags are too type safe, but like enums, like you can't add one to an enum without casting the one, which doesn't quite seem right. Well, okay, this is weird. Possible overloads is just the integer thing twice with nothing else? That could just be our using code being wrong. I don't know, it's supposed to be everything in the overload list. I mean, we do have this confusion of using the it variable twice, but our macro doesn't let us name the variable. Well, let's just take a look. We're just going to look. We're just going to look. We just looking. So line 14, collect overloads is where we get these, and we say it's not called line number anymore, it's called L0. All right. Site arrow file name. String, no, no, no. Yes, no, that's Windows. Main, there we go. Collect overloads. Oh, we already. This is the wrong one. 12. Not yet. There we go. Finally, 14. Okay. Decal. Boom. Overload list 2. Overload of blah, blah, blah. What's in our overload list? 2 different things. I bet these are 2 different imports of the same frickin' thing. I don't know. Let's see. That's a do thing. Good. They should all be do things. Oh, you're always first in your own overload list, by the way. So decal is F2E0, and overload list sub 0 is F2E0. 1 is F530, and it's also a do thing, which is good. It had better be. Overload of F2E0, import link F408. This guy, import link F1B8. Interesting. They're different. Okay, import link. Import link means I'm pointing at the real thing now. EFB0, which is also an overload. Wait, what was it? It was EFB0, but that is the last import. All right, so this one, import link, no. So these look like different, well, I don't know. This had better be a procedure. Oh no, it's declaration. Sorry, the declaration's expression. Wait, no. We already have the declaration. We want the expression. It's confusing because there's an asked expression and an expression. Expression is lambda number this. It ends in 369. Okay, this one. These are 2 different procedures. So why are we're not oh God, we're not printing out the same procedure. We're printing out the using, right, but we're printing out the int one and the float one. Okay, this is fine. This is just what we expected from before I fixed the using. So maybe I just didn't fix it that well. Maybe we haven't performed the other using yet, or maybe we did perform it and it didn't end up right. I'm not sure which of these is the thing. The reason there's no good laptop dev machine is that everybody is driving prices down. Down, down, down. I used to pay $3,000 for a laptop back when that was like twice as much money as it is today. Right? So I used to pay $5,000 or $6,000 for a laptop. Now everybody makes things in the price point of like $1,200, right? Except MacBooks, which they can charge infinity money because they have a captured audience, except they're rapidly alienating that audience. And rarely some people who kind of clone MacBooks. So like Razer was selling things for a moderately high price for a while, but I can't buy their new laptop. And their old ones always had big build quality problems. So yeah, I can't recommend Razer anymore. But you know, like they all think their laptop needs to sell for like $500 in Best Buy in the base configuration. So you're not going to get anything good out of that. You're just going to get cheaper and cheaper builds. Yeah, I would easily pay $5,000 for the laptop I want. I'd pay more than that because I use a laptop so much. Yeah. I sort of fantasized for a while about starting a laptop company if I made a game that made so much surplus money that I could just do hardware, which hasn't happened yet, but maybe someday. Maybe someday. ThinkPad X1 Extreme. I haven't seen that one. But it's probably too low powered, I imagine. $1050 Ti. That's not that fast. Doesn't seem too bad though. I bought a ThinkPad P1, which is probably about the same spec as this. So they're obviously not selling it yet if they just revealed it. Where do they list the specs? Give me, if you're a news site, give me some actual news, jerks. Ah! Is it a matte screen or a glossy touch screen? Oh, they don't say what resolution this is. So I assume that's 1080p. Yuck. Yuck. I don't know. It doesn't seem that good. Like, it seems about the same as the P1 that I bought, so I don't know what the difference is. I don't have the P1 yet, but you know. $768p laptop, that would be horrible in the modern day. Okay. So this error message is really not good, but let's write that down. I'm going to probably go to bed before too long, but we will at least make a list of things to fix and we can do them later. So possible overloads using fboozle1. We want to show declaration and how it was imported. Right? So we want to say, oh, here's the actual procedure. Here's how it got there through this using, right? And then this is redundant. This type mismatch wanted given argument 1. Like, come on, bro. It's too much redundancy and not enough goodness. Have I seen the ThinkPad P52? Yeah, no, that's the one with the numeric keypad on the side, which makes it much less desirable. Yeah. Numpad is not as strong of a no sale as no buttons, but it's close. There's a ranking order, you know. So I almost broke down and got something with a numpad, but then they announced the P1, so I was like, okay, I'll get that. Oh, sorry, that was meant for the elite screen that everyone else can't see, but it opened on the other side. I don't know what this is that I'm looking at. It's some code that creates a file. Oh, with a file name that couldn't convert to UTF-8 properly. Yeah. Yeah, good times. Good times. How powerful is the Quadro in the P1? I don't really know. It's like a chip that nobody seems to have reviewed because nobody shipped it in a laptop. Like it seems like it's maybe around GTX 980 level, mobile 980, but I don't really know. If the alpha part of the keyboard is centered, then having a numpad is a bonus. I agree, but that is never the case on these laptops. Never. Never, never, never. Okay. What were we even doing here? Besides looking at 0x000000 and so forth. We are going to determine whether it's the case that this using hasn't fired, or whether it just hasn't done its job. And let's just do that. We can do a breakpoint. Let's make sure they're both on the same line. This one's on line 12. This one's on line 11. Nope, we need a blank line. Line 12. Okay. So here, we will say importer line numbers 12. Okay. Importer file name. Thing 1 is firing. Thing 2 never fired. So that's like a whole different problem. So the problem there is, while we're waiting for more things to show up, we shouldn't be resolving any overloads. Like what's happening is we're exporting these overloads, and that's great. And then we're resolving this thing in main. Got so many mains. This thing, well, okay, these two work because we've got these. And then we do this one, and these have been pulled in, and the other ones haven't. Now, there are supposedly mechanisms to prevent this from happening. So, for example, the scope that we're in can be waiting on usings. But when those export to an upper scope, that does not have waiting on usings. So we have to do that. We have to, in this case where we're exporting, we have to say, you gotta wait to resolve things for us to be done. Right? Yeah. I believe that if these were both usings into the same file scope, it wouldn't be a problem. We would wait for both of them, I think. We could test that, but I'd rather solve this problem. Quadro P1000 is a 1050 Ti with 128 fewer. Yeah, it's a Quadro P2000 in the one that I got. So, that's a 1050 Ti, but then the X one has a 1050 non-Ti, I think. So I'm just too tired of all this stuff to figure out how all that works out, honestly. The thing about a switch is you can't trust the switch. How do you know it's really disconnected? If you have a cover, you can cover it. Problem is the microphone's still live, so have fun with that. You need to have like a webcam that has the mic built into the camera, first of all, right? And then there's just a detachable cable on the back, so you know it's detached, right? Yeah. Okay. So this is the one place where we set waiting on usings. We set that in the target scope. Really? Wait, what? That seems too late to set it. Oh no, this is, we're taking the using out. We're taking the using out of the linked list. We could factor that into a routine, but it's still longer than 10 lines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Oh my God, it's 17 lines. We can't do that. So this is when we're done with the using. So where do we set it, actually? Oh, here. And then we go to the end. Yeah. And we just looked at the enclosing scope, which is not enough. Not enough. If it's exporting further out, we need to put it there as well. The problem then, well, we also need to clear it from both scopes. Okay. Let's factor this out because we're going to need to call this twice. So 103.16. Wait, only imperative blocks are marked as waiting on using. That's not good. Why is that? So in this case, these scopes, the file scopes are not imperative scopes, they're declarative scopes. They just have data. So, well, let's look at, maybe we only just remove, I don't know, note uncompleted using. Let's go back there. When do we call it? Anytime there's a declaration that is marked as using. What is this? Oh, this is if we're importing a declaration that's marked as using. Okay. Here, note uncompleted using. If it's data declarations, we don't do it. Why? Because we use dependencies. That's not going to fly. Okay, this suddenly became a complex enough thing that I think I would rather do it not late at night when I'm tired, because this is now important. because we have to do several things. So first of all, we have to say note uncompleted using on data scopes generally, and remove dependencies, right? And use the uncompleted using system. Then we have to verify that everything compiles with just this change. Oh, we don't even know about that for this other stuff that I'm doing. Like, let's see if we could build Sokoban. Probably can't. And then once we've done that, then we need to do on parent scopes if exporting. And meanwhile, just keep an eye out for how to simplify all of these things and make them better and so forth. Please work. Oh, it worked. Now that we're using the dynamic libraries for Visual Studio, we're back to about 1 second, which is good. It is 11:08 p.m. All right. Let's go here. Let's go here. Let's run tests. Look, we didn't need to set up any variables. Okay. I do get to check in this using modification and declare a small amount of victory tonight, but we have found some things that need to happen. This is good too, because one of the long-term, the dependency system that I was talking about in that comment is like the original way that I was trying to do out-of-order compilation in this language, and it got us started and it was pretty okay, but it has a lot of problems. So over time, I've been gradually wanting to wean us off the dependency system whenever possible. And so I guess we're taking dependencies on usings. And we will want to stop doing that. This is going to be good. We have a game plan for how to improve and simplify things, fix some bugs, make using more robust. And that's exactly what I want to do. So that is good. Commit. Fix one incorrect thing in using. There are several others to be handled soon. That was pretty good because, you know, like I said at the start of the stream, I was just hoping to look at this and think about it a little bit and maybe program a little. And that's what we have done. But we not only looked at it and thought about it, we have several concrete things to do to improve it. And at the end of all that, so we'll want to remove the dependencies, waiting on using on the parent scope, make sure all the tests run and the game runs, and then our new thing one, thing two example will hopefully work. It might still then have that other problem about other things that we will have to look at. Do I plan to continue using dynamic linker for shipping code? Not for games that I ship, no. Unless the DLLs are packaged right in there with the game, I might consider it. But the problem is some platforms just won't let you ship dynamic libraries no matter what. Like you can't ship a dynamically linked game on the PlayStation 4. It's not possible. So, you know, for now, for debug builds, like if you mean when we ship the compiler, then sure. For fast turnaround on a debug build, I'll take whatever I can get. If it speeds me up by 1/4 of a second to use the dynamic libraries, I'll take it, bro. You know, assuming we don't pay that much at startup from loading the dynamic libraries, which I don't think we do, but we should measure it. Because I've never measured it for these specific libraries. Oh, we can also make a mini task of factor remove finished using. That'll be our first mini task tomorrow, because we're going to call that multiple times. What am I doing instead of doing dependencies? Well, so there's this waiting on using thing. I mean, the answer is different depending on what's happening, right? So here we have this waiting on using thing, which is a list that's on scopes. Like every scope has this pointer. And if this pointer is non-null, then you're not allowed to look up variables in that scope, because there might be more stuff that's going to arrive in that scope. That said, what it really should mean is maybe you can't look up procedures, because other things would be an error if new stuff were to arrive. But we'll think about that later. You know, we got to get it working. Yeah. All right, everybody. Thank you for coming by. We will attack this some more tomorrow. Let's find someone to raid or something. Programming. Not a lot going on. Prototyping a ray tracing algorithm. It's this guy again, right? Same guy, yeah. Low-level tools UI or MISC. We're seeing a lot of the same people. That's not too surprising. We've rated most of these real programmers that we see. We always look at game dev first anyway. Let's do that. Although I feel like maybe we just go programming all the time, because anything we see here anyone have opinions? You know what? People in the elite frequent flyer lounge get to have the most vote about who we go raid. So if you're in the elite luxury platinum edition frequent flyer lounge and you have an opinion who we should raid, then you could type that. So these are the game development, and these are the programming. People in the elite frequent flyer platinum edition lounge do not have a lot to say. Top left corner of programming page. Recursive raids are not okay. Oh, hold on, Vigard. No, I might have to refresh manually. Integrations, refresh. All right, maybe you can get in the lounge now. You like the ray tracer guy. We have 1 vote for the ray tracer, 2 votes for the ray tracer. What's the difference between the elite frequent flyer professional edition value customer lounge and the elite frequent flyer platinum edition value customer lounge? Well, one of them is more upscale than the other, but But you'll be wondering forever which one, if you're in the upscale one or if there's a better one than the one that you're in. Okay, well, the lounge has spoken. So we will raid this guy. Thanks everyone for coming by, and we will do more namespacing stuff later on. See you later.